Why the hell so many people are trying to tell me to slow down? Seems like motherfuckers should be shutting the hell up and enjoying the show.
All right, so we have Jen Perryman and Lindsay Perryman with us, okay? Yep. You ladies worked for R.Kelly for quite a while, all right? And it was during some very tough times for him. And so I believe you ladies, I don't want to speak for you, have been advocates. You've wanted, you're calling for his release. You feel that he is innocent. And I just kind of wanted you to unwind your story because you didn't get much time in the Surviving R.Kelly documentary done by R.Kelly. I mean, done by Lifetime. Okay, on R.Kelly. Okay?
On R.Kelly.
Yes, on R.Kelly. And so I've always wanted to hear more from you, okay? Because I kind of thought you were coming from a non-biased position, you know? And so I'm happy to have you here. I'm glad I caught you ladies because I know that you are very, very busy right now with kids and work and things like that. And so, Jen, we can start with you. If you could just tell the audience who you are before we dive into some details that have not been out yet. Okay. Yeah. Giving your time working for R.Kelly. So yeah, we can start with you, Jen, if you can introduce yourself, and then Lindsay will go to you. Okay.
My name is Jen Perryman Emmerich, and I was an intern for R.Kelly starting in 1999. I interned at the studio after Lindsay got hired. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in the music industry, and Rob gave me an opportunity as an intern to see if it was something that would be for me.
Okay.
And then eventually I became one of his personal assistants. And then I did not see the longevity in that as a career, mainly because, and I'll just be honest, mainly because his wife at the time was very difficult to deal with.
We're talking
about she would,
okay.
Yeah. So that's ultimately why I quit. But Rob was always wonderful. He was very professional, a great boss, and also became a good friend. And so because we had always worked so well together and just got along, we continued our friendship over the years. And first we stayed in contact because Lindsay worked with him for so long. And then eventually I moved out to Las Vegas. And every time Rob would come in town to do a show or for the Billboard Music Awards, he would always make sure that we would meet up, have dinner, go out to clubs. And then as of up until he got arrested, we'd always just stayed in contact over the phone.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lindsay, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
My name is Lindsay. Yeah, I'm Lindsay Perryman Dunn. I started working with R.Kelly in 1999 after I graduated from audio recording school from Tempe, Arizona. We're from Chicago, so it was natural for me to come back from my program in Tempe, Arizona and do an internship. At the time, Chicago had Chicago Recording Company and Chicago Tracks. Those were the two places for audio recording engineers to intern and then get hired. CRC, which is Chicago Recording Company, they had a reputation for not hiring their interns, where Chicago Tracks had a better history. So that's the entire reason why I ended up at Chicago Tracks. I began as an intern and, getting coffee, cleaning, studios, food runs, things like that. And then I got the phone gig. That was like a big promotion for me. So I'd be answering the phones at Chicago Tracks during the day, and then intern on as an assistant audio engineer at night in Music One. So I did that for, I guess it was, I want to say, because it was like the summer. So I guess it was through about January. And Robert had been in Philadelphia recording with some artists on the East Coast. So he hadn't been in the studio a whole lot, just a little bit. And he called me one day because Lafayette, his music director at the time, thought that I would be a great addition to the R.Kelly team in a studio management aspect for Robert's studios that he had at Trax. He had music too, and then an office downstairs and another small studio. So he called me from Philadelphia and said, Lindsay, I want you to come work for me. And I said, okay. And he said, what? Start now. So I did. I went back and Lafayette set me up in an office. And so I moved up. I worked with him on and off for about 8 years. I ended as my role was general manager, was the last position I had with him.
Okay.
And I went and worked with other artists in the interim. So I did Rakim, Nelly, Cash Money, B2K. I worked with A-Marie. I worked at Jive Records for a couple years. And then each time, whenever I was done with the gig, then I'd come back to the R.Kelly team. And so back and forth, I'd go from Chicago to LA, back to Chicago to LA, New York. I lived in New York for a couple years. And then I left my job. I left with him. It was like 2007, 2008. Right at the time of the trial, and mainly because he wasn't recording very much. He was trying to record, but he wasn't getting a lot done. He was very stressed, and Chicago Recording Company actually called and offered me a position as their executive producer. So I made that change, and then down the road, because I had been in Chicago for so long, for the first time in a long time, while not working for R.Kelly, I was accessible. And so the prosecutor of Chicago came into my office at CRC with her baby, her brand new baby with her, wanting to visit with me. And so I did visit with her. And she had all these files of, women who had settled out of court with R.Kelly and really felt that, the case, it was very important to her to win this case against R.Kelly. And that was with the alleged underage girl with him. I had never seen the video at that point. And then after visiting with her, next thing I know, I had a subpoena and I was forced to testify in the 2008 trial.
And this was dealing with Rashona LaFleur, the one who I guess we still don't have, tangible evidence to say that it was actually her in the video. But
no, we don't.
What the trial was about was R.Kelly sleeping.
Yeah, and I was like 24, 25 when I testified. They threw me in a room. When I got to the courthouse that day, they threw me in a room for like an hour or two with the sex tape on a loop. I was forced to watch it, and then they brought me directly up to the stand. Yeah, and
you watched child pornography.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know they got done like that. Okay.
Yeah, on a loop. On a loop.
You could have just shown you a picture, like, "Hey, is this?" Yeah. Okay.
Well, and that's the thing. So you do that to somebody, and then you usher them into, court. And, it feels like you're at somebody's funeral in that sense.
Vulnerable.
And I had nothing bad to say about R.Kelly. They asked if I thought the girl was in the video, was Rashona. And I thought it was because of the cheekbones of the girl. But now that I've, gotten older and I have training in healthcare, that was an ignorant statement to even make.
Why?
You can't be sure, because you can't be sure of somebody in a video, especially nowadays, unless you were there to watch the video being made. The person in the video, it resembled R.Kelly, but you couldn't confirm that it was him. The person in the video resembled Rashona, but it also resembled a young Lisa Van Allen. So, and those are two people that are familiar to me. So imagine how many people it actually might, match up to. A lot of people have similar profiles, things like that. And I had been privy to the media, newspaper articles, the prosecution, coming to my work and just laying out all this information that was biased and one-sided. And it would be safe to say that I was in a very manipulative relationship with the prosecution of of the Chicago area for this trial. And I'll say, as a witness of that time with Lindsay, when I remember back in 1999, as an intern for Rob, I was just coming into the studio, my daily shift, and one of the security approached me and he said, "Hey, has anybody from Sparkle's camp," which was an artist that Rob had dropped from his label. He said, "Has anyone from Sparkle's camp contacted you or been in contact with you in any way?" And I said, "No, I haven't heard anything." And I said, "Why? What's going on?" And he said, "Well, they're trying to get Rob to pay him or to pay her $250,000, or they're going to take some tape to the press, not to the police, but to the press." And I said, "Oh, wow." And I said, "No, I haven't heard anything." And I said, "Well, is he going to pay it?" And
Rashona is Sparkle's niece.
Yes. So Rashona is Sparkle's niece, and then Rashona's dad, Greg Landfair, is a studio musician on many of R.Kelly's albums. He was a guitar player.
Okay.
So Sparkle was the link for that relationship in general. And then the reason why Rashona and her brother were around the studio were because Dad was there playing, guitar, studio sessions. And I remember her mother worked full time as well. So
he employed the entire family.
And Rob values family very much. Okay. So he had no problem with anyone bringing their children to the studio. Well, and we had been introduced to Rashona, as I mentioned, as a nanny. She was at the Olympia Fields home with Drea and baby toddler Joanne, and she was introduced as the babysitter and family friend. And it was not.
Was she at the time?
She would have been 15, about 14, 15 years old. Just as a babysitter. Never saw her alone with Robert. Always saw her with Drea. And the only time that I saw her at the studio, by herself, meaning without Drea, was her and her brother came, with overnight things like a pillow, blankets, because their dad, Greg, was recording his guitar overnight, because that's Robert would work overnight. He'd have people work overnight. So they came to stay, and it was very telling, because hindsight is so 2020. Is that, for one, the only reason why anyone thought that relationship was weird is because Lafayette, the music director for Robert at the time, he had mentioned openly to me and Donnie Lyle, who later became Robert's music director, had mentioned that was a weird scenario right there, pointing to Rashona and her brother sleeping over. But he didn't go into it
at the time.
I don't know. Probably within the same age bracket. I mean, a couple years apart.
Okay.
So it would,
like a Michael Jackson situation. He shouldn't have.
Well, yeah.
Kids sleeping.
And that's probably what he was associating. Okay. Well, he was either associating that, or he was saying these kids should be in bed because it's a school night. I mean, there's so many different scenarios, and that's where, like they say in the Bible, I mean, you're not supposed to gossip. You're not supposed, because all of a sudden it plants these seeds that can be negative. So something that was innocent of maybe mom is not available and has to work, and dad is stuck with the kids, but he has to go, play guitar, and the only place that the kids are allowed, is to go with dad.
Right.
I mean, you got to look at the different scenarios that can be out there. I mean, I wouldn't compare it to a Michael Jackson situation, because Robert didn't have kids in the studio like that. He was always surrounded with his, guys who he played basketball with. Okay. And there were only a close knit of a few women at a time that would come, through the studio as well. But Lafayette's thinking probably would have kind of just came from that Michael Jackson scenario, and then started a whole but again, rumor. But Jenny is assuming. Jenny has no idea. She wasn't there. She's going off of something I just stated to you, and Lafayette stated that to me. I didn't think anything of it from that moment that Lafayette said, because I had already seen so many people around the studio hanging out, and that, for instance, a Chicago cop who had gotten off of duty, who was a friend came to the studio to hang out, and Robert wasn't available. He went to play basketball, so she ended up falling asleep in a lounge, until he came back, and it was like 3 a.m. I mean, it wasn't unusual for people to stay the night there. It just wasn't unusual. Okay. To have kids there, yes, that was unusual. Rashona stuck out because her and her brother were the only kids besides Al Jorgensen, who was in a band called Ministry. His daughter and her wife and his ex-wife, Patty and Adrienne Jorgensen, they lived downstairs in Al's old office. And so she was a teenager that was at the studio all the time too. And then Vince Lawrence, who is known as the godfather of house music, he was also a co-owner of the studio, and his family or wife and his stepdaughter would come and visit him at the studio. So you had a lot of people, but my point is that I had to go through the trial. Robert and I, we did not keep in touch for about 2 years, and then we reconnected, and we've stayed in touch ever since.
Yeah, because that's what made me reach out to you. I mean, it was kind of like, oh my God, I wanted to talk to them. I didn't think you got as much screen time as I thought you should have had in the Surviving R.Kelly docuseries. But like I said, there was an intention. And when you posted to your Instagram the other day, Jen, you said, missing my brother. You posted a FaceTime call with you and R.Kelly. And you said, missing my brother. I had just woken up from a nap and you got home from jail. You have nothing to hide and never had anything to hide. That's why you FaceTime everyone in fear that more people would betray you. I miss your advice and I don't feel like I fit in without your guidance. Miss you, brother. In time, this too shall pass. Of course, you put the hashtags, and then you tagged his daughter at Buku, who just shared with us that she has just lost a child. And she said, you say, your father has always and will always be a legend and loves you guys more than life itself. Jaya and Rob Jr. And then, of course, you tag the Shade Room and CBS and CNN. And so, of course, the winos, they were like, hey. And when I saw I was like, okay, now it's time for me to reach out. So your stance on this, working for R.Kelly since 1999, is what? I don't want to put any words in your mouth.
Well, I'll speak from someone who I've traveled with him. Okay. I've ridden his bus traveling with him. Okay. I've been in hotels with him. I've spent a lot of hours with Robert, and I've never seen him ever be abusive to a female. Okay. I've seen him, I mean, you're in Atlanta, right? Right. That's where you're located. So you're around a lot of artists in your area, and you've gotten to know a lot of people, I'm sure. Right. Robert's an R&B star, so he has personality. Arrogance to that personality. There's someone who's very stressed out, who's going to be guarded because he doesn't know who to trust, but he also knows the music business game very, very well. He's a very smart person, very calculated with his music and his business, and he really trusts everybody, and that's to his own fault because it's really come to bite him every single time. A lot of people portray Robert, take advantage of him, and he's allowed it in the past. So with the women, I've never seen anything except him hold them in the highest regard. I mean, any female that was around Robert, they got a rock star treatment. He didn't want any of his homie guys talking to the women because the guys were not, they come from all parts. He didn't want anyone trying to hit him or do something goofy or, like I said, Robert didn't ever have time for drama. So he just nipped it in the bud. You're just not going to talk to these girls, and girls don't talk to these guys. We're just not going to do that. You're here to hang out with me. You'll hang out with me. We'll have a good time. And that's how when I watched the first Lifetime documentary, I didn't see it when it first came out because I just didn't have interest because everything I've ever read about Robert didn't match up to what I had experienced working with him. Okay. Now, working with him was never easy. We were very busy, and he was always doing some really, really big things. So I'm not sitting here saying that Robert is a perfect person or an angel or, or doesn't have a mean streak in him. No, he can be a stressed out, hardcore boss in the sense of job done. Let's do this. He's fired people and then he's hired people, just because like Jenny, for instance, she was hanging out with me because I was working there and he said, hey, why don't you help your sister and be an intern, and he did that a lot with people. And his managers, took advantage of him, eventually. I mean, there's a reason why he doesn't have as much money as he should. I mean, it's a sad scenario, when you look at the whole picture. But the women, I didn't recognize half of them. Okay. And they were saying that they were around the time period that I was around. And I was exposed to all of his, people and guests. Then, there was one gal.
You ran the studio.
Right. I was in the studio, my office. When he moved his studio to his home in Olympia Fields, my office was at his home. When he traveled on the bus, he and the family were in the back. I stayed in the front of the bus, the same bus. When we traveled, they'd be in a suite. My room would be right next door. I'd have breakfast with them, lunch with them, dinner with them. I went to LA alone with Robert. He's never, people say, oh, because she's white, not his type. No, Robert had white women. Yeah. He's dated white women. He never took advantage of me in that way. Mm-hmm. He did nothing but help progress, my career and help me grow and understand the industry, not just in the music industry, but life lessons in general. Okay. And he would take it a point to mentor me, and he would do that with other people too. Okay. But he got in creative zones, his recording engineers, not, there are a couple of them that come to mind, James Lee and Dylan Eli, and they were in the room. And if Robert's cutting vocals and it being done correctly, or, the engineer happens to be, rude to his guests in the room, he would snap at him, nip it in the bud. He didn't want to. And the guys didn't like that. They wanted to just recording engineers wanted to work in a happy environment. They can just talk to everybody and just, it's all good in the room, and, it's just open. And it's not unusual because, I did work with them. I'm on a Snoop Dogg song. Can I Get a Flick with You? Okay. And so I was hanging out at Snoop's camp for a while when I was in LA, and Quasi Day, and Joseph Weinberg, his producers, really wanted me to work for Snoop in the same capacity that I did for R.Kelly. And when I was hanging out with Snoop, Snoop had the same dynamic as Robert did. You walked in the room and there were a lot of people in the room, but Snoop was at the console, the recording console in the room that it was set up. He's facing the console, music's playing, and people are walking up, speaking to Snoop in his ear. He's not turned around being like, hey guys, welcome to my, that's just how it is. So there's sort of a boundary. The lifestyle. Okay. Yeah. And, and you get that with CEOs, at the last hospital I worked at, I got to know our CEO. He was on site, but he had a secretary. You made an appointment, and he had an office, and it's that same, lineup. It's just there is no secretary and there is no office, with these recording artists. They're just right there. Okay. Are exposed to build their own boundaries and walls. And so, Robert is someone, and I learned this when I went to LA. Robert, he keeps a close-knit camp. He does not run around with a bunch of celebrities. He was Chicago. He made it a point to build his business in Chicago. He had interest in LA, but he wasn't trying to live the Los Angeles lifestyle by any means. And so a lot of people are very curious. Rob was like an enigma to people. Whenever I was in LA, and I was, when I worked with Rakim and, the other artists that I did while I was out there, they all want to know what R.Kelly was like because he was so guarded. There weren't that many people that were exposed to R.Kelly. So it leaves a lot of opportunity for people to make their own opinion of him. It's easy for, for instance, Jenny had talked about, Sparkle, making money and that there was a tape. Well, then you fast forward to when the tape lands at the Sun-Times and the Sun-Times journalist, writes the article about the sex tape and identifies the girl and finds the aunt. Okay, so if any of you guys are from Chicago or been to Chicago, how is a overweight, ex-musician journalist for the Sun-Times able to watch a blurry sex tape and find the girl's aunt, call her, and bring her to the Sun-Times to identify the girl and then write about it? How did he pinpoint that it was Rashona and that Sparkle needed to be called? How? That doesn't make sense.
So you are saying that Sparkle
was not associated with R.Kelly.
Okay, so you're saying that Sparkle was the one that sent the tape off because she was fired by R.Kelly and he refused to pay her $250.
I don't know if she sent the tape off.
Okay.
I can't say that.
Okay.
But my thing is that a tape existed that was supposed to be Rashona Landfair, Sparkle's niece, underage, having a sexual encounter with R.Kelly. The tape doesn't go to the police first. It goes to the Chicago Sun-Times, then the police. But the journalist is able to identify the girl and call the aunt. All in a short amount of time, and then write an article on it. How, out of all the African American girls in the Chicagoland area, how did he know that that was Rashona in the video?
How would he even know who she is? So that doesn't make sense. In the meantime, I'm going to work and at the studio and being questioned if anybody from Sparkle's camp has approached me and is trying to get $250,000 out of Rob. You see how this all comes together?
Okay.
So it's just, when you look at the root of these issues for Robert, it's just odd. I mean, Barry Hankerson was still managing Robert right at the tail end of when I started working for him. I remember Barry coming to the studio.
Okay.
And we were playing, Robert was playing New Music for him, and Robert treated him with the utmost respect. I remember Barry Hankerson being a very big deal to Robert. He was, the guest of honor. Robert wanted to make sure he was comfortable, and this is at the end of their relationship. I mean, he wasn't being mean. He knew that he had been taken advantage of at this point so many times by Barry, because you hear, the stories of his business, that happened with Barry and why they had the falling out. But he still treated him with respect, still had him in the studio, played music for him. And then, we never saw him again. It was always rumored that Barry had a vendetta out for Robert, that he was affiliated with a lot of really bad people, and that he, his main purpose was to bring R.Kelly down. So, you're dealing with that root, right there. And then, like I said, the Sun-Times, it's just very odd that he was able to pinpoint this random African-American underage girl in a blurry video and know to call her aunt. And then you hear about the threats of Barry Hankerson. And I know, I've heard from, camps of like Missy Elliott and Timberland, they had their own falling out with Barry, but that they felt like almost like, slaves to him, that, indentured slave. I mean, they felt like they could not get out of their business deal with Barry. So
Barry is, I want to make it clear just in case the audience are probably wondering, like, who's Barry? Barry is the uncle to Aaliyah.
He what?
He's the uncle to Aaliyah.
Yes. Yes, he's Aaliyah's uncle.
Right. Okay, so here we have two people that are working for R.Kelly. Rashona's dad.
Yep.
Aaliyah's uncle.
Yep. And that's the other thing too, is that Barry, it was really important to Barry that Robert develop Aaliyah as an artist. So she was at the studio all the time. They were writing music. And for those of you in the music, I mean, a good example is
I've been told that finding your perfect match is almost impossible. Almost. Well, guess what, baby? No more swiping left. Because whether you want something big, something small, something new, or you just feel like dumping your old one.
Miss Dee of Imperial South Co. is a licensed Georgia real estate agent who is here to help you to find your dream home or to help you get rid of that old one. No matter if you're a first-time buyer or empty nester looking to downsize, she can help you with all your buying and selling needs. Check out Miss Dee by visiting her website at www.imperialsouthco.com.
No one is going to work harder to get you better results.
Let's put the wine down for a second, because at times like this, we need to take a shot of the olive leaf extract, because the olive leaf boosts our immune system and has been known to reverse high blood pressure, lupus, diabetes, and certain cancers. Check them out at myoliveleaf.biz to learn more and to order, or simply click the link below in the description box. Now back to the wine.
You'll hear about artists all the time. I mean, artists and producers, writers, they keep very close-knit company.
Right.
You hear about artists coming up, living in, so an artist that's signed to another artist or signed to another producer, they might be living in their house,
It happens all the time. Jamie Foxx is scrutinized for having a young woman. I think she was like around the age of 19 living in his house.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're struggling artists. And if, I guess,
they're struggling artists, they don't have money.
Finds them, they're like, okay, we're going to invest in you. Of course, you have to sign with me, and I'm going to provide you room and board. Work on your music,
Dr. Dre.
access to my producers. Yeah, Dr. Dre. But then what happens too is, I believe so much time is spent with artist producer, and lines get crossed, boundaries are broken.
Yeah, well, I would say a creative, the best way to put it, I wouldn't say boundaries are crossed. I would say they go on the artistic journey. It's like a painter, when he starts bringing his painting together, he's sketching, and then he starts bringing in the paint, and then suddenly the sketch and the paint are flowing, and then you're starting to see this picture blossom. Right. That's a singer, writer, producer. They're putting in their part, and then they're on this journey together. And, like you saw it with Diplo and Sia, and, the album that they did together, they were on LSD was the group and album that came out. They were on an entire journey together. And who knows what happened in their relationships as they created this album, but they became family, best friends. And I'm guarantee you, they were together 24/7 as they were going through this journey. So, Aaliyah was young, but her uncle was facilitating, this relationship and this deal. Her parents were very much involved. She's very close with her brother. I mean, there were family dynamics here that weren't broken, and nobody had concerns. Then there's rumors that, he and Aaliyah were married, and then there's a marriage certificate out there that I've heard was doctored. That's not even real. When I started working for Robert, I was not into R&B music. Okay. I was really into like punk rock. I did the whole Nirvana, whole Babes in Toyland thing. So that's why I was a contender to be hired for him in the first place, because I wasn't starstruck. I mean, I walked into the room the first time I ever met him, and I couldn't pick him out in the lineup. I'm like, which one's Rob? And he liked me about me. Because I just didn't. And as I got to work for him and saw his creativity, I mean, he's so talented. The music's beautiful, and I love everything he's done and that I've been able to be a part of. But I was walking in, not naive. I mean, I'd already kind of been there, done that in my lifetime. I got from Chicago to Las Vegas and the whole thing in my childhood, but for teenage years, I should say. But I knew funny business, when I walked into it. And the thing is that no one ever mentioned Aaliyah. Nobody ever mentioned not to mention something about Aaliyah. It was just not even a topic of discussion. I didn't even know that she had been there, except she had this small dog that everyone always loved. I can't remember its name, but that was the only thing that I ever heard of, was back in the day when we were recording with Aaliyah and the dog. 12 Play, that was an old name. So everyone talks about 12 play.
Which is the title of R.Kelly's, one of his albums. And
but that was it. That was it. No one ever said anything else. Same with like, you know, and that was the other thing too, is being the way that I was and just, you know, just didn't really care. Like Robert meant nothing to me in the sense of I didn't find him intimidating. I didn't know his history very well. He wasn't a big deal to me. So when I came in, you know, these girls, if they would have been in trouble, you know, I would have been a person that they would have, I mean, I took them shopping, took them to Walgreens, you know, I would have been a person that they could be, I need help, you know.
Women, but everybody says girls these days. That's
right. Women, but
now I know that he is currently right now, one of the charges that he is facing is from 2008 involving Rashona LaFleur, okay, who was identified. Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry about that. So I do know, let me start over. I do know that one of the charges Rob is facing right now is dealing with that 2008 case involving Rashona LaFleur, okay? They've somehow brought it back. But I know personally, because I've looked at the jail records that were sent to me, and how much money he's getting, who he's getting money from. And Rashona LaFleur, till this day, is putting money on Robert's books.
Yeah, that's good. I'm not surprised. I mean, there was, you know, after the trial, her dad still recorded. I mean, I was, you know, I'm not surprised. I mean, they were close.
I did hear, because I was told the reason I guess she couldn't testify is because her family had moved to Germany.
No, they were in the Chicago area. But the thing is that with that court case, if no one called a person as a witness, or if they couldn't subpoena you, you weren't a part of it. Okay. Like I wouldn't have been a part of that trial if I would have just happened to move, you know, when I left R.Kelly's camp instead of staying at CRC, you know, I wouldn't have been a part of it. But because I happened to stay in town.
Was Rashona LaFleur, the girl who he was on trial with for that sex tape, child pornography, was she still living with R.Kelly during the trial?
No. During the trial, Robert was at Olympia. She never lived with Robert.
Okay.
That I saw.
Okay.
She lived with her parents in Oak Park.
Okay.
And she had a mom and dad, her brother.
So she would have.
I mean, she would come. There were like they referred to her as their goddaughter. They became very close. Both he and Drea. Okay. And like when Robert was out of town and I was at the studio, he'd ask me, can I go pick up Rashona from school? And I would, because her mom was at work, not far from the studio. And I would bring her to Robert's office. She would do her homework there. And then at, you know, like 5:30, I'd drive her and drop her off at her mom's work. You know, and he wasn't even in town. When, you know, we were in Europe on tour, her parents had called because she had gotten in trouble with her boyfriend. She was, I think they got in trouble drinking with her boyfriend. And so Robert was consulted because they considered him like a second dad figure. And so he yelled at her about the dangers of drinking and being with boys, you know, while drinking. I remember that. We were, you know, on the tour bus. So it wasn't ever a thing where I thought, well, maybe there is, you know, I mean, it was never questioned.
You didn't see anything. And so you didn't suspect he and Rashona had any sort of like inappropriate relationship whatsoever?
No.
Okay.
No,
everything
not
was
at
done
all.
with the consent of her parents.
Yeah. I mean, there was never a weird scenario. You know what I mean? Like there was never something where I personally walked away and went, well, that's weird. I mean, I never had that. And I was there for so long, you know, it always felt safe, comfortable. And like I said, Robert was very picky about who he kept around him. And the guys were all, you know, great. I mean, now the thing is that once you hung out with Rob, you know, like his guys, You know, they go play basketball with him, and then they'll go in the studio with him, and then he'd want an entourage around him, so he wouldn't want the guys to leave, and they'd be with him for days, no shower, you know.
Yeah, that was a big thing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's my choice.
but that's not unusual. As I went and worked with other camps, that's not unusual.
Okay.
You know, and that's the thing with the women is that, and I don't know their names. None of the women were important enough, you know, that I was busy working. I had my goals and things that I was doing. I would see some of the same women that were hollering at R.Kelly in LA, you know, at the parties with, you know, the not Dr. Dre himself, but, you know, his artists and, you know, just other events that I would go to, like Dub Magazine events that I went to and things like that. The Magic Johnson events that he had, like at Sony Pictures. And I mean, I just see some familiar faces that I'm like, oh, I saw her in Chicago with Rob. So there were a lot of the same women, you know, around. And when I saw the Lifetime documentary, the first one, what really bothered me was all I could say was, oh my gosh, I've never seen that lady before. And what is she talking about? Like, that doesn't even make sense. That doesn't even add up to Robert's personality. And I understand, you know, I have never been in an abusive relationship myself, but I've heard from victims that they can go through an entire relationship needing help. You know, they have that like sign where you put up your hand or whatever. So there's that. Or people going through a relationship and then later on looking back going, that wasn't right. Wow, I was abused or I was manipulated. You know, and the one thing that I saw that was just interesting to me is that these women, none of them had police records. And I understand the police, you know, is not for everybody. Not everybody feels, you know, that the police are going to be their safety net. But there was also no hospital treatment for any, you know, wounds or, you know, abuse in that way. Or what was the other thing that I had noticed? Oh, that they all came back and did some sort of legal action with Robert when it had to do with basically they weren't going to end up with Robert. So basically they had broken up and they weren't going to have a relationship with him anymore. Or, you know, like Tiffany Hawkins, I noticed in the documentary, you know, he said that you know, that baby was not his when she said she was pregnant. And then from then on, she was mad and it was like, okay, I'm taking legal action now. You know, that was a common denominator for all those girls.
And I want to interrupt you for a second. I'll say something that I've never been loud about that I told you because it is so personal. When I lived in Las Vegas in my mid-20s, and I was actually roofied and date raped by someone that was around my age, another white male, and I didn't do anything that night. I mean, I woke up and I couldn't remember anything, and I tried to get a hold of that guy, and he didn't respond. And then I slowly over the next day or two, I started to remember events and realized that I had been drugged and date raped. And so I did go straight to the police and I filed a report, and they had me go to the hospital, I called the police and they told me to go to the hospital, and they did a rape kit on me. And then an officer came and filed a report, and then they sent me home. And then the police officer called me a couple days, or a different police officer called me a couple days later, and basically said, if you were going to press charges, he basically talked me out of it. But I did not. The point is, something like that did happen to me. I didn't go and look for a publicist and go to the news. I mean, it's a very personal thing. I called the police. I dealt with it privately. I don't even know if I told you about it. I really didn't tell anybody. It's embarrassing. It's personal. And So yeah, I mean, I have been a victim in my past, and I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't do anything that any of these alleged victims are doing because it is so personal. And when you are telling the truth and you are a victim, you go straight to the police. That's what you need to do as soon as possible. That's what a victim does.
And it was so hard. Like when that first Lifetime series came out, and like I said, I was just looking at like, oh my gosh, like none of this is true. It's crazy. And then the only person
there were a few victims that did say that they did go to the police.
They what?
They did go to the police. There were just a few, not a lot, because a lot of times, what we've seen now is the parents that are rallying, and the girls are coming out of, I guess, and from under having Stockholm syndrome or something like that, or being manipulated. And so that is when they, they just kind of have this epiphany. But I do know, statistic wise, is that when it comes to a lot of Black women, and, versus white women, if a Black woman were to go to the police, she wouldn't get the same treatment as a white woman. So I know for a fact, like personally, like that, especially back in that time, like in the 90s or, early 2000s, we're still kind of like Black women were looked at as kind of the lowest on and treated that way, unfortunately, because of what's been, what's happened to our race systemically, during slavery.
Well, and it's,
but
that right there, that what you just said, I mean, that's just disgusting. It shouldn't be that way at all,
Right.
And I've never seen it that way. And that's the thing, is that me being at the studio, and around him as much as I was, if someone were in trouble, I really feel that they would have felt comfortable to talk with me. But I didn't recognize, any of the girls on there except Lisa Van Allen and his ex-wife, Drea. When Drea,
I don't mean to cut you off, but you said you saw her coming around a lot. And
with Beverly. Yeah.
Okay. And that she
was
what was mind-boggling to me about her story is that all this abuse went on, right? And she left Robert, went and had a baby, and came back with the baby.
Yep.
And
he got her a car.
Okay.
And he bought her a car.
Okay.
After he bought her a house.
And he was in a relationship with her and Beverly.
He bought her a house. Mm-hmm. Yep, in Florida.
Interesting.
Or maybe it was Atlanta. But yeah, she even had pictures of it on social media. But he loved her. I'm going to be very straight and honest. He loved Lisa. Loved her, adored her. She was very important to him. There was another girl, Beverly, that was around. And I just remember her because her mom would always come and bring her, a change of clothes, and she was always with Lisa. But Robert loved Lisa. She was very important to him. They had fun. They'd be, laughing, things like that.
What about Dominique Gardner? What about Dominique Gardner?
I didn't know her. She wasn't around when I was there.
I do know, she does not want to see R.Kelly go to jail.
Yeah, but
she still loves him.
Well, was she the one that was in L.A.?
Yeah, and her mom saved her.
Okay, yeah.
She lived down the street from her mom. Yeah, her mom lived down the street from R.Kelly's house here.
That doesn't even make sense, because Robert was in Chicago and she's in L.A. doing all this stuff. That doesn't even make sense. Robert doesn't have a record label, okay? He doesn't, he had his own record deal and music publishing deal at one time, but he never developed himself enough to have, like, he wouldn't have had an artist in LA recording and writing, staying in a hotel. He never put himself in that position. He never got that far with his business.
So what about all the stories that the girls are saying that he lured them in with potential record deals and artist development, the same way he developed Aaliyah, Sparkle, the list goes on, Changing Faces, the same way K. Michelle. I mean, K. Michelle has a great deal of respect for R.Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she lived with him.
I don't think he lured anybody in. I think he, you know, whenever he had people around him, if they were singers, you know, he would hear them. And if there was potential, they'd, you know, end up in one of his songs. Or, you know, he did a couple deals. Boo and Gotti.
Okay.
He did a deal with Cash Money, got them signed there.
Okay.
The guys, I can't think of their name, the guys who sang in the background of the Titanic song, I can't think of their name. But he did a deal. Yeah, but he did a deal with them. And then the one guy, the one main guy from that group that I'm thinking of, he ended up working with the artist Joe for a long time. Okay. Selena Johnson, he did music with, you know, and was a big advocate for her, you know, when she was, because they had the same A&R, Wayne Williams. But, you know, I never saw anyone there being developed when I was there, you know, that would have been hanging out with him all the time, female-wise. And there wasn't anyone trying to sing. If they were, you know, like I've just named Selena Johnson, and then we have Rebecca Francis-Scotti. But those were people that, you know, that's what they did. They had studio time and they recorded and they were brought there to record, you know. And everyone knew that line. Every guest that came, you know, they knew why they were there. They knew that they were hanging out with R.Kelly. And a lot of them just wanted to be around him to watch him create because they love his music, you know, and they loved him. You know, fans, if I've learned through this process, is fans all around the world have their own very special relationship with Robert just through his music, even though they've never met him before. So imagine somebody with that passion about him and his music actually getting to meet him and hang out with him. You know, I'm sure it's, you know, I can't even imagine, you know, the emotions and, you know, everything, that how special they feel and probably let down when it doesn't go their way. These women in particular, though, that I've just seen, I mean, all of them, you know, since the Lifetime docuseries, I mean, like I said, I didn't recognize any of them. Okay. I didn't know any of them. There was one girl in Atlanta who was trying to be R.Kelly's personal assistant. And she went on and said that she was kept in a room and did a tour in the old rented house he had in Georgia. And I asked Robert to start watching that documentary just to see, just to understand.
Is that was the older lady?
Not older. No. One right before that.
I can't think of her.
What was her name? She's been. She has a ton of mugshots.
Yes, that's the one. She's older though.
Yeah.
She's not.
She is older, I guess.
She left her
right.
kid.
I don't know.
I cannot think of her name. It's gonna come to me after this interview. But
we don't even.
Ashanti McGee. Ashanti McGee.
Yes.
That piece of trash.
Okay.
Yes. Left her kids to go and work for R.Kelly, and was managing the girls on the tour bus. Yes. So she was trying to be a personal assistant, and Robert, started watching the docu-series, and he called me like 10 minutes right after he started watching it, because we hung up, and he was like, I'm just going to watch it. And then he called back and he goes, I've never slept with her. Lindsay, I never slept with this one. You know, this one. Yeah.
And you know, artists are promiscuous, you know, and that's why I'm not saying Robert is not a perfect human being. I'm not sitting here saying that he is this godsend angel and, you know, he was married to Drea and they had, you know, I mean, they had an open relationship, which I've discussed before, how I found out about that.
Yes, speaking of Drea, Jen, you said that you quit because of Drea. You didn't like her.
Yeah, so when she was hired as an assistant, you know, to me, then Drea, Rashona was back at school, so Drea needed help at the house with Joanne. Okay. So Robert had Jen go to the house, and Jen would have to stay the night with Drea. And then it got and I didn't realize how bad it was until Jen's like, can you please go one night? Because I got to have a break. So I'm like, oh, and I really wanted, you know, music was my ambition, the business. So I really didn't want to do that. But I was like, okay. So I went out, and I mean, Drea was just, you felt like a prisoner. You were the help.
Drea.
You were the help.
And I finally, it got so bad that I finally, because I didn't want to tell Rob since that was his wife. Yeah. But finally I got Rob involved, and he said, okay, I just told him.
She'd have you moving furniture. She'd have you, you bring her breakfast in the morning.
She said that she was locked in a room, that R.Kelly locked her in a room and had
no,
to come out
she was in her bathroom, eat her breakfast, put it outside the door, shut the door, and it was just the known fact that you were supposed to come get her dish. And then there were some positive things about her too.
But I remember going downstairs for breakfast at the start of the day, and she didn't like what I was wearing. I was wearing shorts and just a tank top. It was summertime in Chicago. I was wearing shorts and a tank top, and she didn't like what I was wearing. And so Drea had me go upstairs to change my clothes. And
you
so
you were revealing too much or something, or
I don't know. I mean, I wasn't. I was just, skinny little white girl just wearing shorts and a tank top. I mean, it was just me and Drea, Joanne, and Jaya when Jaya was a little baby. I mean, and we were at the house. Yes, she had been born. She was a newborn. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, she was. Yeah. She came out. Yeah. She was in tears. She was like, "Oh my God!" Like it was just hell living in that house. He had me locked in a room. I had to beg for food. I remember I had to come out. I remember one day he made me crawl on all fours, and he had a chain around my neck. He abused me.
She did have to ask him for permission to leave the house, to run errands. And that's because she refused to have a bodyguard. So when he and Barry Hankerson parted ways and Barry Hankerson had it out for him, he was always paranoid that maybe something would happen to his family, that Barry would have something done to his family. So he lived in fear for that. Okay? So when you take that understanding and then Robert's traveling and his wife is home with no security and just roaming free, he would want to know where she was and when. I mean, and all she would do is, "Hey, can I want to go to the grocery store?" He'd be like, "Okay, call me when you get back." "Hey, I'm going to go to the mall."
She was at all times.
He just wanted to know where she was.
And they lived on a golf
course in her own house.
No, and they lived in a golf course. It wasn't a private membership, country club. It was a open to the city country club. So and that was in our backyard. So she was accessible, which would have added to his paranoia.
Okay.
And
for their safety.
It's understandable.
So she didn't have to beg for food.
I mean, I remember when
she didn't have to beg for food because you guys went and got the food for her and put it outside her door.
Yeah, and she also would cook. She was an amazing cook. She'd make this spaghetti that had this like taco seasoning and brown sugar in it.
Chicken teriyaki. I remember she made really good chicken teriyaki.
Strawberry ice cream was their midnight.
That was really good. Up until recent, there was videos on Twitter as recent as 2018 of Drea defending R.Kelly. And then all of a sudden, it switched.
Yeah.
He made me do this. He locked me in a room during a hurricane and didn't check on me. Made me walk out on all fours. And I had
her dance studio failed.
Her what?
She needed a different change in direction in her career.
I really feel like it was career oriented. It was for her career.
10 years from now, when all this passes, I mean, she'll be pro R.Kelly again when he's caught up in child support and taking care of them.
Ooh, the shame.
It's bad. But her actions had torn apart their family. The kids were no longer in contact with Rob because she was doing this whole sob story
he wasn't sitting in child support and she was struggling. And I was like, why won't you get a job?
Well, and that's what everyone else said. And then they were saying, her daughter had to drop out of college because he wasn't paying for it. Well, he actually really wasn't obligated to pay college, but he just chose to. And, you'll look on Joanne's social media, she was school and she was pursuing her music career. So Robert was paying for school when he wasn't even sure if she was going. I mean, it wasn't, he was given money when he could. And then there were times where he realized my money is going towards a publicist fee so she can get out there and bash me publicly. Yeah. Why am I paying for this?
Drea doesn't have a job, and she has hair, 24/7 hair and makeup, personal assistant. She's got a whole staff. And
and she's bashing him in the media that her funding is from him. I mean, at a certain point, he was when I was with him the 4th of July before, like a couple weeks before he got picked up by the feds, and he was upset with his kids. I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, and he's like, no, they're doing it. They're saying this stuff, and he said it just is what it is. I mean, he had no control over it. But he wasn't hateful. And Robert, everyone that you will ever meet that actually does know Robert will tell you he does not, he doesn't get vindictive. He'll be sour. I mean, he'll, hold a little grudge until there's peace, between people. But he would never close his door and lock it to his family, kids, or friends. I mean, he'd always, you knock on the door, he'll open it.
Okay.
And that's the thing too, is the kids could have left their mom, if they're so curious about their dad, I mean, at any point they could have left their mom and gone and hung out with their dad, and he would have been open arms.
Well, Joanne did a song with him in 2015, his daughter, his oldest daughter.
Okay.
And they did a song together. He was trying to help her.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just sad to see a family tore apart, a man put behind bars. Without bail, and that you see murderers out on the street on bail, it just doesn't make any sense.
And still no evidence against him.
So the prosecution, because you probably know through the legal system, like if you talk to cops, every time that you hear like, oh, Robert didn't get bail, every cop's going to say, oh, they must have a lot of stuff on him to keep him. And you'll hear that consistently. And they probably do have a lot of stuff, but it has not been sent to court to be ruled true or false. So he has a ton of allegations, enough to keep him behind bars, but he has not had his day in court to start throwing out stuff. You have to start organizing it. That's what trials are for. Testify, rule if this evidence is true or not true. But right now, what the prosecution has done, and what was unusual, is when that first Lifetime docuseries came out, then the Chicago prosecutor went out and basically opened up an 800 number and said, if you've had any wrongdoings with R.Kelly, call this number now and we'll press charges. And she did. She got some more charges against him. And that's unheard of. That's a witch hunt. That's never been done. And you'll never hear that being done. And that's a black man. I mean, that's another thing too, is,
now,
I've never heard this.
Now, I don't mean to cut you off, but what about his brother?
No, Bruce and Carrie.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce was around when I was at the studio. I remember he had a little girl he brought with him to the studio. So there's another family, event at the studio. But he was always in and out of jail. When he was out of jail, Robert always, hired him for like security, just to, be there around him. I never met Carrie, but from what I heard, and I don't know this for a fact, but he was a foster dad. So when they were looking at him as being a possible contender for being the man in that tape in the 2008 trial, he was a foster dad, and that would have taken away his whole foster, setup that he had with the state. And my understanding is he's helped a lot of kids, but he's also been.
He claims that R.Kelly, his brother offered him $50,000 to take the rap for that tape, and that he's actually seen other tapes with his brother with underage.
I'm willing to bet. Well, and like I said, Carrie was never around.
Okay.
So they didn't have a relationship, and then Bruce, you hear good things, I mean, you heard the jokes that like Rob played on his brother, but they played jokes on each other. But Carrie was not around. So I personally wouldn't trust anything he said because there's a reason why he wasn't around.
Okay.
I mean, if he was his great loving brother, I would have met him at some point, and I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be talking to both the brothers here soon.
And I've never heard anything bad about Carrie.
Okay.
Or Bruce. just that they run into trouble. That's the only thing I've ever heard. I'm willing to bet, though, that if you talk to Carrie and he mentions my brother was going to pay me this for saying that it was me in the tape, it probably wasn't his brother that said that. It was probably someone like Daryl McDavid or an attorney that was trying to do that. And probably just trying to get rid of the whole scenario.
Rob didn't even have access to his own money.
No, he didn't.
Daryl McDavid. I mean, there were times that Lindsay had to go pick up Rob off the freeway. Or the
one time he ran out of gas. He was going to his house in Olympia Fields. He was in his like McLaren, and he ran out of gas. So we had to get gas money to him. He was out at like 89th Street, you know.
Okay.
Then there was another scenario where he was at a hotel, and I had to go pick him up because he didn't have money, you know. Not that he wasn't broke, but he didn't have an ATM card, and you know, he would get Daryl McDavid would cut a check, and either me or June Brown would go cash it, and we'd give Rob his money whenever he needed it, cash. So he didn't operate on credit cards, and he was given a, you know, stipend. And then he would, you know, just go, Daryl McDavid, I mean, he was in charge of all of his money. They'd review his books, I think every few months, but, you know, honestly, I don't think Robert had the true education to understand, you know, everything. And he had to put a lot of trust into Daryl. And, you know, Daryl was the accountant when he was manager. So that's why Daryl became his, like, business manager when Barry left. Because it was just last man standing, and he'd already been a part of it. And he trusted him.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the paranoia, because I've heard you mention a few times in the interview that the reason Drea had to pick up the phone is because R.Kelly was paranoid. There was a lot of people out to get him. Mm-hmm. Do you think that is the reason why the girls that Azrael Clary, I know Joycelyn Savage is still with him presently. Mm-hmm. All of the girls, Ashanti McGee, Dominique Gardner, do you think that is the reason why they had limited communication? 720 Royal wants you to look like the royalty that you are. Shop 720royal.com for head-turning, Afrocentric design, head wraps, face masks, bags, and more. Find them on Facebook and Instagram. Just search 720 Royal. Remember, no matter which way you look, you are royal, so wear it proudly. A new way to fight bad breath using Herbarint. Herbarint is a solution of extracted natural herbs and not alcohol that clears bad breath in seconds. We all know that bad breath is caused by tooth decay, gingivitis, plaque buildup, cavities, bad hygiene, or even hunger. Adding just 1 capful of Herbarint packed with natural grown herbs to your daily oral routine can help fight against all that without burning. Get yours today by using my coupon code TASHAK. The link is below in the description box. They weren't held hostage. They or anything.
Yeah,
like in your opinion, you know, because
my opinion. Yeah, I really think. Well, here's the thing. He wasn't like hyper paranoid, like a schizophrenic.
Okay.
He was paranoid for good reason.
Okay.
Scared. He was for good reason. He had, you know, he had an understanding that there were people trying to hurt him for real. It's not, you know, this is a true, you know, real. It's understandable. But I think with those girls, Robert's a very hard person to get a hold of. He does not have voicemail. And if he does not pick up his phone, you won't get a hold of him. You can reach out to some of his guys and they might try to hand the phone over to him, but it's not a guarantee. So in those girls' scenario, I can only speculate because I wasn't there and I didn't recognize them, but they came after me, the girls you're talking about, is that they were guests of his in a room. Robert, you know, if this was in Atlanta, he didn't have the same setup as Chicago Track. So there was no receptionist, there were no runners, studio runners, or recording engineers there to take food orders and go get food. It was probably up to the girls to get delivery or to ask Rob to ask one of his security guys to get it. They probably didn't bother him too much, and they were probably worried to leave because they wouldn't be able to get a hold of him again. So I think it really stemmed about wanting to stay in contact with him.
Because I do know that she flew very often back and forth from Atlanta to Chicago to see her mom. And so when she was, I guess, quote, rescued by her mom in the Lifetime documentary, like you said, she was in LA and R. Kelly was in another state. So, and I do know there are cults. People can be brainwashed, but they had freedom to go home.
No, they had
some of them. As what I've seen, because I've
the Dominique thing was fabricated. In my humble opinion, it was completely fabricated because the only reason why an unknown person like that, or up and coming artist, would be in LA away, like if Jermaine Dupri had an artist and he's in Atlanta, and he, sent them to LA to record, they'd be there to record with whatever producer, and then they'd send the tracks back and forth, and then the artist would come back to Atlanta. There was no purpose for Dominique to be in Los Angeles. So the whole scenario does not even make sense.
And how does she get a room number? I've never heard of a hotel.
It doesn't even, it had to have been fabricated.
She called her mom to tell her where she was, and, her mom came with the cameras because, like I said, Michelle Kramer has always had, a motive. Now, I do want to end with this other, because we can go on, because you guys know so much information.
Yeah, there's a lot that's not out there. And the thing is I want people to understand that there is a close-knit group that worked with Robert.
Okay.
And Robert held himself, he was always very professional. He was a workaholic. He had a steady routine. He'd be easy to stalk because he did the same thing every day, all day. And he left himself open. He had a weakness for women. But in regards to an abusive nature, an evil streak, that's nothing that we saw, and that's not anything that I've ever heard anyone, speak of.
Okay.
So all of these allegations, and I'm really not, it's not like I'm in denial, like, oh, it's perfect, because it's not a perfect working scenario. The music industry, period. No one has a happy working scenario in the music industry because you work a lot of hours and there's someone else trying to get your job. So you're constantly hustling. And, these girls I really feel are looking for the limelight. Mm-hmm. Bottom line.
Because that studio, Rob co-owned it with other owners. There were like 4 owners. So it wasn't just an R.Kelly studio. You had like Destiny's Child coming through. You had Redman coming through. You had
Limp Bizkit. Several artists. Half of it was commercial. And then the other parts were, it was privately owned by Slang Music Group, R.Kelly, Ministry, Al Jorgensen. And then you had the commercial owners, which were Reed Hines and Frank Piano. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, like business people around, that it wouldn't have given the opportunity for funny business.
And they did not look up to Rob.
No, Frank Piano, he had gotten out of prison because he was a part of organized crime, and that's in his record. Like mafia.
Mm.
He wasn't messing. He did not care about any hood stuff. Cabrini Green, that's where our studio was. Mm-hmm. He was not bothered by it. He had bigger fish to fry. And he would have been someone that if there was a scenario like that running around in the studio, he would have taken care of it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
He was on probation also.
Wow.
For organized crime.
It's a lot.
There's a lot of stories. And, the media has only spoken to the alleged victims. They've never tried to do investigative reporting. They've never really tried to speak to other employees that Robert had. Jenny and I just got contacted because we went, full force on social media, and that's how a producer found Jenny. Mm-hmm. But you're not hearing the truth. You're not hearing from the people that were actually around Robert. You're hearing from the scolded females who claim they had this crazy relationship from Robert. And the ones that said that they were, around when I only recognized 2 of them, and that was Lisa Van Allen and Drea. And the other ones that were on there, never seen them before in my life. So, that's something I want people to understand.
And what's happening to him is sad, and it's wrong, and it needs to stop. And if this can happen to R.Kelly, this can happen to any artist.
Oh yeah.
Well,
anyone.
Well, let me ask you this. Because I respect everyone's position. You know, you were there. I was not there. The information that I have is what's been given to me from people that are close to Robert, victims, alleged victims. But let's take Aaliyah. Although her uncle facilitated the career, okay, and that R.Kelly developed Aaliyah, she was underage. Even though, yes, she had permission from her family, does it make it right, in your opinion?
To have a job?
It's a trend.
To have a relationship as a 15-year-old girl with a 30-year-old man.
They weren't in a relationship. They were only working together.
So they
weren't a couple.
You don't believe in the marriage?
No, they were not a couple. Both of them even deny it. Even Aaliyah, I found footage of her even denying it. That's the thing.
You think she denied it because he told her to deny it? Because no.
She was engaged to Damon Dash, and Damon Dash and Jay-Z before Best of Both Worlds. Like when I started working in 1999, they were coming to Chicago Tracks on a regular basis. And Damon was in an active relationship with Aaliyah. And I'm sure if he felt that there was any type of abuse or, anything, I mean, he adored Aaliyah. He would have, I'm sure he wouldn't be hanging out with Aaliyah's ex. I mean, that would have made Rob one of Aaliyah's ex. Damon Dash, being in an active relationship with Aaliyah, would not be hanging out with her ex. But a lot of artists, they're developed young with producers and writers. Just because you're hearing of Aaliyah and Robert, they're one of thousands of other stories just like this. Does it make it right? I mean, you hear of child actors and how screwed up they get. A lot of them become drug addicts, things like that. No, these businesses are not for children. But again, that was up to her uncle and her parents to draw that line. And they facilitate.
What's funny is they've never spoken on that. Her parents.
The only thing the parents say is that a relationship never happened, that the marriage was not real.
The mom has. She's tried to speak out in honor of her daughter.
Yeah, I mean, she's never co-signed a relationship between her daughter and R.Kelly, because I was told by Carrie Kelly that, R.Kelly.
Carrie was never around. Carrie was not around.
So
Carrie only knows
that he saw Aaliyah and her mother having
I wouldn't trust Carrie.
Threesome.
And I'm not trying to be rude to Robert's brother, but he wasn't around.
Okay.
He can say whatever he wants to say, but he wasn't around.
Okay.
If you want to know what happened with Aaliyah and Robert, I would get a hold of Barry Hankerson. I would get a hold of Aaliyah's parents.
Yeah, her parents won't speak on it at all.
Right, but I mean, those are the...
Well, he can't speak on it because he says every time that he tried to talk to Aaliyah about it, she would not open up about it. So...
Well, there wasn't anything there.
That was I think the only thing that he said is, she said he's a bad man. But she never spoke of any type of abuse or relationship or anything. So it's kind of like this mystery. But
Aaliyah seemed just fine. So try not to speculate on Aaliyah and how she was feeling. Look at her career path after Robert and her persona in the media and any interviews she did. Aaliyah was not a victim. Aaliyah was a strong Black woman with a great career and a long future ahead of her, and very smart. She did not feel like she was a victim. And think about all the bad things that people have said about her uncle, Barry. I mean, but he put Aaliyah first, and she had an excellent career. So if you want to speculate, then go off of evidence, and the only evidence we have is her career, what she did after Rob, and interviews and things she said, and that's it.
Okay.
And I don't see a victim there. I don't see anyone looking for, the police, she was fine.
He does tend to have a lot of soft spots with celebrities like K. Michelle, Wendy Williams feel sorry for him. I mean, a lot of his victims do. A lot of his victims do feel sorry for him. I mean, I've heard Dominique say to me she does not want R.Kelly to go to jail. he does not.
Yeah, but she'd also want her mom to have a book deal.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
You're right.
That's the thing. I don't think they're victims. You know, when you say their victims don't want him to go to jail, I don't think it's a Stockholm syndrome. I really think they're not victims. I think they didn't get what they wanted out of the relationship, and they're mad, and they want their money. I mean, I really think that a lot of people that get close to celebrities get close to them with an agenda. Mm-hmm. There is an agenda. You know, where I live now with my kids, you know, my husband, mm-hmm. my agenda is my family life. So I'm here. But if I wanted to be around a celebrity for, you know, money, lifestyle, travel, try to get my own deal, I'd be with an artist. You know, you don't just go around artists.
Are you and your sister going to be, I guess, testifying on behalf of R.Kelly during this trial?
We've offered. I don't know. Well, if the attorneys need us, we've spoken with them.
Okay. Because I do know it's Rashona LaFleur. What is the girl's name?
Well, supposedly Aaliyah has even been brought in as Jane Doe in this case.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting, and I know they're going to keep that sealed. But yeah, I mean, there's a few victims that they're using. I think I can't remember her name. I interviewed her 2 years ago. She has a shirt with R.Kelly's semen on it, and she met him during the trial. And so many victims, and I'm trying to and I've had somewhat steady communication with her, and I'm just having a mind blank right now. Very bad.
That's all right.
They are they're bringing up some victims who are now of age, and they're kind of using that to kind of take the charges on back. Now, personally, if there were, because I can only report on what was told to me. Now, I do know R.Kelly did leave with R.Kelly with her family's permission at the age of 17. I do know she came back home. She graduated. She went back. They were not under the impression that a sexual relationship was going on because she was to be developed by R.Kelly. But instead, she has
in the state,
she fell in love with him. Go ahead.
The state they were in too, 17 is legal. I mean, if she were having a sexual relationship at 17, it is legal, depending on the state.
And obviously it was consensual.
It was consensual on her end. I mean, she's made that clear a few times. But she does say now that she was brainwashed and manipulated, and she felt like it was more like being
and that's the thing. I mean, no, there would not be a cult-like factor to R.Kelly. It's not a cult. Okay. But I could see a young girl, you see so many women who marry men just for money, young, attractive, like Playboy models, with Hugh Hefner, for instance, that they don't find 80-year-old Hugh Hefner when he was alive attractive, it was his wealth. Right. And that you could easily say that he manipulated you because he had something that you want. That's
R.Kelly has compared himself to Hugh Hefner because Hugh Hefner did have several relationships with underage white women at the mansion. He did make sure those girls were within a certain age range. He didn't want you if you were older. Young girls sold. And so I thought it was interesting to have you come on because, I've never really seen anybody, except for you see celebrities here and there. Like I said, K. Michelle, Wendy Williams, the list goes on. They kind of say, I support him. I don't think it was really like that. But you have been adamant about your stance from the beginning that he's innocent. And you've seen Rashona around with the permission of her family, and her family still worked for R.Kelly even after the trial.
Yes. And I never saw any manipulation. Greg Landfair was pretty solid in the camp. If you look at the credits, he's played on several albums for Robert. So it wasn't like, she's around so you can keep his job. Or, you could go on and on with scenarios. But that was never the case.
Maybe her parents were, like you said, like they should be at home. They shouldn't be spending the night while dad is working overnight, unattended.
Well, maybe they probably weren't in the position. I mean, if Sparkle had the falling out with Rob, I don't know the dynamics of grandparents and things like that, but I know when my husband's home, if if I have to be at clinic, and the kids, it's between me or my husband, and my husband's got to go, like to the police department. Well, the kids are going to come to the clinic. They're not going to go in the police car while he's on shift. Like you got to pick a parent. So maybe they didn't have the dynamic of a few times where there was someone to help them with the kids. So they had to go with one or the other. Mm-hmm. Who was the best scenario? Mom at the factory or, dad at the studio.
Right. What do you both say to any viewers out there who was going to say, you're white, you don't get it? R.Kelly acted a certain way around you because you were white, and those black girls were abused. What do you have to say about that? Because I'm sure a lot of people...
We were the minority. We were the minority. We were the only white girls around, and we looked up to him. Okay. We were, and Drea always made sure that I felt belittled. We were the minority.
But in regards to, the black opinion on the white opinion, I can't, you're going to have your opinions. You're going to have your ideas. You're going to have your judgment. And I'm not here to change that because you have your right for your opinions and your judgments. But hopefully you see past my color right now and think of me as Lindsay, who worked for Robert in a capacity for 8 years, very closely with him, and just hear my testimony. Okay. That's what I want people to see. So see past my color, because I know Robert did.
Yeah. And hear us.
Okay.
We have nothing to gain from this.
Yeah, nothing.
Okay. Can I ask you one last question? There are some sisters on the internet that claim that they are R.Kelly sisters.
Yeah, they came forward right before he got picked up. I think they said that their dad was his dad, and they've never done any DNA tests. But they've been very supportive of Robert, and he wasn't in the position to find out, if there really is a true blood relationship or not. But my thing on that is, if they're being supportive, he needs all the support he can get right now. But in regards to, have they been proven by DNA to be his, legitimate sisters? Not yet, no. Okay. But his dad was MIA, so there's no telling.
Okay. Because it is rumored that his father is his grandfather, and that R.Kelly was born out of incest, is what the family is telling me. And the actual name Kelly came from the mom's side. So if they are blood related by dad, his dad's last name would it be Kelly, unless it was the grandfather who birthed the sisters.
Huh. Yeah.
I don't know. We only heard about his mom because he loved his mom so much, and she had died of cancer shortly before Lindsay came on. But we never heard anything about his dad at all. So Joanne Kelly, it would have been her last name.
Right.
As far as any incest, I don't know. Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, they said that
I've never even heard anything like that.
I guess the mother, Joanne, before she died, had confided in a very close friend of hers that, she never wanted to tell Robert that his father was actually his grandfather.
Well, before she died, she was in hospice. I do know that at the hospital, in-house hospice. Yeah. And, the thing you got to understand with cancer patients is they are highly medicated, strong narcotics,
morphine,
dilaudid morphine, strong.
So, that's a strong allegation.
My point is I don't know if that would have been a real thing, or if she just would have been kind of out of her mind saying weird stuff. I don't know. Okay. But if that is the case, think about how sad that is for him to start his way in life that way, and then to have great success, and then this tragic end to his story, and now where he's sitting in federal, jail. It's sad.
But as far as his dad being his grandfather, we've never heard anything.
I mean, we've never heard anything like that ever.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jen and Lindsay Perryman. But Lindsay, you're married, right? So,
Yeah,
okay.
I am done. Yeah.
Okay.
And Emmerich, I used to be married, happily divorced.
She said happily divorced. Well, thank you so much for trusting me to share your story. You know, I'm not a black or white person. I like to meet in the middle, in the gray.
I do want to add one thing, though.
Sure.
I do want to add,
Sure.
Rob and I talked about his mom that came up in one conversation. And he did tell me that he was the last person to be with her, that they had called at the hospital and said that it was time, and he had been out doing something. So he rushed to the hospital and he ran up the stairs of the hospital to be with her. He told me this, to be with her while she died. And he didn't think he was going to make it. And he did. He made it while she was still alive. And he was there when she died. So if there was any last moment confessions or anything, I mean, Rob was the last person to be with her when she died.
Okay. So it's safe to say we know where you stand and what you believe. And I thank you for coming on here to speak your truth and what you witnessed and what you saw. And so it does kind of open up a lot because, you know, there are a few of the victims that I have exposed in my process. So you come, you say he's done this, and then I find out this. So, and so, you know, talking to someone who is absolutely neutral, who's had no sexual contact with R.Kelly, you were only employed by him, you are no longer being paid by him. And so coming out and speak on his behalf, and they happen to be of another race. I mean, it's very, I think your perspective was really, really needed. So,
well, thank you for hearing it.
If they do find him, I guess, if they do find him guilty of sleeping with underage girls and things like that, I do believe he deserves to go to jail. And I hope that every single victim that sat down in that documentary will have the courage to sit down in court as well. And so that's where the problem comes in. You can't sit down with a publicist and with a production team and a network and say all this. I mean, I just really did a video on this that's going to drop today behind this. You know, you'll have women that come out with such conviction. He did this, he did this. But when shit hits the fan, they're apologizing, not with the same energy, okay? Because when you state allegations like that, and then you're bold enough to say this and you're garnering sympathy and people are rallying behind you only for you to come back and apologize, or you do not follow through, that's a problem for me. Because there are a lot of innocent Black men out there. Now, I'm not saying R.Kelly is innocent, but the stories that I've reported from victims, I just want to see them follow through. And I'm going to be watching very closely at this trial to see if they are going to be following through. You sat with Lifetime, you got to check. No check. You sat with this media outlet. Are you going to sit on the stand? And that's what I'm going to be watching for. So, and I'm open. And if there's anything that, like I said, needs to be updated regarding this case, and I see someone not following through, and I don't want to hear threats. I don't want to hear, oh, I'm scared. R.Kelly is locked up. No bond. No money. No, I know he doesn't have access to money. He's facing tax fraud because he didn't handle his money. I want to see. I want to see if it's going to carry through, because this has happened too much. And a lot of times, you know, there are a lot of, not all, but there are a lot of men, Black men, white men that are in prison over, you know, false allegations or scorned women.
Well, that's the thing. If all this pile, that's why I said there's a pile of evidence against him, right, from the prosecution, but it doesn't start knocking off till you start your trial.
Right.
Once and the thing is that
and prepare for trial, they'll figure out what's going to be
trial. If he is not convicted, if he's found not guilty, there's a lot of groundwork to do, because you have taken a high, you know, respected, pretty,
Black man,
taken,
celebrity.
females' accusations and thrown him in jail for over a year, while he wasted away.
Now the payoffs, because I do know there are a few girls that have been paid off. When they were with R.Kelly and left, and they got, I think his favorite number is $250,000, the same amount that Sparkle was asking for.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I'm going to be watching because, like I said, if you have the courage to come to the internet and tell the world, have the courage to follow through. And if he is a child molester, which
he needs to go to jail. If he's a child molester, he needs to go to jail.
He needs to go to jail.
Yeah, I agree. If there's a cycle, and I would still keep in touch with him. I would not judge him. He needs help. He needs to serve his time. He's a menace to society. If that's the case, then you do the time, you do the crime, you do the time. I'm a firm believer in that.
But we would never turn a blind eye to that.
Right. I'm just going off of what I witnessed while I was there, and I didn't see anything or evidence, of any of this. So, like you, I'll be curious to see if these girls show up to court.
I really hope they do. We've carried a lot of groundwork. I've broken some major stories on R.Kelly. I think the Savages. They honestly disgust me right now. Because of. I'm not going to go back down that road, but I
got harassed by them.
You got harassed by them? I'm not surprised. They threatened to file charges on me for me leaking that, they wanted money from R.Kelly in exchange for their daughter. Like, you can have my daughter. I'm going to get my millions. I want my millions,
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the thing there. And I think they wanted to share whatever lifestyle R.Kelly was living. It wasn't a big lifestyle because money was drying up and it wasn't coming in. He was only getting paid from shows and things like that. But like I said, I'm going to be following it. Now, the STD cases, that right there, I don't agree with.
No.
Yes, he should be charged if he's giving people herpes and other STDs and things like that, if he's playing with children. But it's really interesting to know that Aaliyah's family and nobody from Aaliyah's family talks about that or even admits to an inappropriate relationship. And the same with Rashona LaFleur, the girl who was identified in the sex tape as being with R.Kelly. So, and that's why it was hard for a lot of people too to even figure out what she looks like now because they really didn't know what she looked like then. There's a few photos and they're like, is that her? Is that her? But like I said, I saw with my own eyes Rashona LaFleur putting money on the books of R.Kelly currently. So they have a deep bond. And like I said, Dominique Gardner, she doesn't want him to go to jail. Joycelyn Savage has not left. Azrael, here's what I think. Do I think Azrael was too young to be carrying on with a 50-year-old man? I do. Do I think that she was led into a situation by her parents at such a young age? You shouldn't be given that amount of freedom to go off with someone whose career is established and who's been all over the world and who has access to all these people. I wouldn't allow my child to go. That's I'm not telling somebody how to parent.
But it sounds like Robert offered Azrael stability for the first time in her life.
AdamandEve.com. I'm talking toys, bondage, lingerie, and so much more. Plus, they have 24/7 customer service, so you can order at 3 a.m. if you ain't coming, if you get me, okay? And if something isn't working out, you can send it back within 90 days, no hassle. And if that's not enough, you can also take pleasure in knowing that 20% of their profits goes to help fight the spread of HIV around the world. So go on ahead and log on to AdamandEve.com. Use the code TASHA for 50% off one item plus free shipping in the U.S. and Canada. Some exclusions apply now, but hurry up and visit AdamandEve.com so they can make you come. NutriBurst hits you in the best ways, providing 72 minerals, 13 whole food greens, 12 herbs, all of that good healthy stuff. Start your day with NutriBurst for the energy boost you need to deal with all the shit the day might throw at you. Click the link below in the description box to place your order now.
They have the legal right? The legal age is in all the states.
Yeah.
But if you look at any relationship, any major age gap, in my opinion,
right.
It's not, I mean, I agree with you. If a 30-year-old is with a 70-year-old or 80-year-old, I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, there's age gaps, there's different levels of, the lifespan.
But I will say this, when I was 18 years old, I didn't have a very good relationship with my father growing up. I mean, I do now, but I didn't growing up, and look for attention elsewhere. When I was 18, I dated a man that was in his 40s, and he gave me the attention that I was looking for. So I do have experience in that. He was not an artist. He wasn't famous. I mean, but he was an older man that I was with when I was 18. And
she Azrael loves R.Kelly. She still does. And I think if he were not in jail, she wouldn't have left. Joycelyn is still riding. She's still living in different hotels and with different people. And, she's in contact with R.Kelly every day. Of course, you did see the girls fight online. The house didn't look to me like somewhere where you're kept hostage. I mean, it was a very nice condo. It's very nice highlight. The girls were on the phone, they were on live. Now I could tell that they didn't have much screen time when he was there, because if you're in a relationship, a lot of women do submit, and they both agreed that they were in a consensual relationship with R.Kelly as girlfriends.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this rolls out. And like I said, if these girls follow through, they have my support. But if they don't, we'll be back here on camera.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's literally what it comes down to. Are you telling the truth or not?
I would love to sit in a court before my molester and point him out. You wouldn't have to ask me twice.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
I know exactly who he is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yes. Okay. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Lindsay. Okay. I appreciate you even trusting me, like I said, because you probably could have watched my videos and was like, hell no. She's on the other side. You know what I'm saying? I'm always going to side with victims. I am. But like I said, I thought that you guys did not get the proper platform to really state what you saw and observed. And I think it's only fair. We give a platform to the victims. We give a platform to the colleagues and the ex-employees as well. So thank you. Thank you. Where can they find you, ladies? Do you guys want to shout out your social medias before we go?
I'm pretty private.
Yeah, okay. People can. I mean, they can find us if they want to, but I do want to say this: we are in the medical profession, and if a victim were to approach either one of us, we would help them. We would push them to go to the police. We would walk them through the process. Okay. So, as nurses, as future nurse practitioners, we would not turn a blind eye to a victim in any way. We would hope that they would come to us for help. And we would hope that they would let us help them file a claim to the police, go to the hospital, get a rape kit, and follow through on pressing charges against the person that committed the crime.
And not skip all of that process and go from I'm a victim to let me call Lifetime.
Okay.
But we are medical professionals, and we will always be here to help.
Okay.
Either side. I mean, I'm going into psych. I will help people with psychological problems. And as an RN, I will help people with medical problems. Okay. I will always help both sides. I will never judge.
Okay. To the viewers, before we sign off, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for even allowing Jen and Lindsay to share their story, whether you agree or whether you don't agree. They were there and they deserve to share what they saw. If you have tips on your favorite celebrities, and you want to share your story just like Jen and Lindsay, please feel free to send me an email via unwinewithtashak@gmail.com. If you want to advertise on my platform, please feel free to send me an email via marketing@unwinewithtashak.com. Thank you again to Jen and Lindsay. We will be in contact because, like I said, I'm going to be following this trial very, very closely. Okay. And I guess we got to sign off. Now we got to go.
All right.
All right. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, and Unwind with Tasha K. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. And now we got to go. Bye.